the Mid-Hudson Region. Sorry, that just went. And I welcome you to this evening's Solid Waste Solutions event. Our Vice President, Maura O'Meara, will be monitoring the chat, and Dare Thompson will keep time loosely. We invite everyone to post their comments and questions in the chat. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, thank you for being here. And as always, my battery was low. Okay, so I'd like to begin with our League's mission statement. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization, encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Next, I want to introduce the president of the American Association of University Women of Kingston. Lynn Gore has been a wonderful partner for this event, and I'm grateful for all of her support in bringing this program to you. So Lynn, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, a couple of brief announcements. Welcome everyone. Thank you, League of Women Voters and AAUW members, Manna Jo Greene, Laura Petit, and Katherine Beinkafner. We look forward to a really enjoyable evening.
On a very important Zoom meeting. I can't talk.
I have a couple of announcements I'd like to make, and anybody who's not in AAUW, you are welcome. Somebody's not muted and talking.
That's
so
Kathy. Kathy,
Oh.
can you mute yourself, please?
Thank you. That's from being a teacher. I'm sorry. Anyway, we have a couple of reminders for our members, and also you can always join us. Just email me or if you just want to go on one of our activities, we keep it open. We might charge a little more if you're not a member. We're going to be celebrating tomorrow. Black History Month was snowed out a couple of weeks ago, and there's a wonderful celebration tomorrow at the Kingston Center of SUNY Ulster from 2 to 6. One of our members is going to receive an award. There's a flyer coming out for Paul, which is the Performing Arts of Woodstock's presentation for Suddenly Last Summer. And there'll be a group attending April 3rd. There'll be a flyer about that. Our Happy Valley Soup Sale that supports girls' scholarships is continuing to the end of April. And I'm working on a Broadway show to see the Tina Turner musical for June 1st. So if you're interested in attending that, I'll be sending out details soon. And my email is my name, Lynn Gore, 54@gmail.com. And we'd love to have anybody who wants to participate in any of those activities. But we're very happy to be here tonight, and thank you for including us in this opportunity.
I will unmute myself. All right, let's introduce our panelists this evening. Katherine Beinkafner serves as a senior hydrogeologist. She has conducted geological investigations for major projects and has reviewed remedial designs for groundwater treatment systems. That is polysyllabic. She serves as an expert witness, has prepared testimony for public hearings and potential legal proceedings. Kathy is the current chairperson of the board of the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency and continues to look for new ways to deal with solid waste issues. Manna Jo Greene, how many terms have you served with the Ulster County Legislature?
This is my 5th term.
Okay. 5-term Ulster County Legislature who has been involved in the field of solid waste management in Ulster County at least since the mid-80s. She served as recycling coordinator and educator in the early days of the Resource Recovery Agency and is the environmental director of the Hudson River Sloop Clearwater, as well as founding the Hudson Valley Sustainable Communities Network. She was a critical care nurse for 22 years before becoming involved in environmental issues. Laura, and how many terms have you served?
This is whoops, I lost my picture. This is number 5 for me as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Laura Petit is a 5-term Ulster County legislator who has served as sustainability educator and community advocate for many years. She created the award-winning New Paltz Zero Waste Action Plan, among many other activities. These are just the briefest of bios for these women who have been instrumental in making positive changes in our area for a long time. So the league's been an important part of solid waste solutions for many years. I'd like to bring you to our Wayback Machine and show you a couple of slides from the beginning of our involvement in the field. So now I am going to,
Are you on mute?
I'm going to share my screen. Okay, it's just a couple. So. I am screen sharing. Okay. So we started in 1971, and actually Shirley Cobrand did. We have done many, recycling education and events. For instance, we did something out at Ulster, SUNY Ulster a couple of years ago. We have, participated in all kinds of education. As a league, that's what we do best, and that's what we do most. We've attended a number of environmental fairs, and currently we had Kathy O'Connor. We had been at the last Forsyth Park Earth Day event, and hopefully we'll do that again this year. We do speak on issues to governmental officials, such as the one sitting before you. And have been on different advisory committees and youth programs. I remember back in the day, Manna Jo, that you did an Earth Day, and it might have been one of the first Earth Days ever. A whole event at my kids' school. It was pretty wonderful. We write letters and do all, everything that we can think of to teach people. That's what we do, and advocate. So this is our Shirley Cobrand back in 1971 doing the first glass recycling.
Wow.
And our committee was called the Environment Task. It was called the Environmental Force. Barbara Patrick. Does everybody remember her? She used to have this that trunk was in her house, and she had meetings in her dining room, and she would show us what was in her trunk. And this is actually what she used to do. And I agree, it's not garbage till you mix it all together. So Mescal Hornback, I don't have any pictures of her, but I just had to put here. She was addressing the Woodstock Town Board, and she said, "Can I talk about recycling? I have it burning in my soul." So anybody that knew her, knew that that was typical. Okay. All right, Cindy Lanzetta, this is you back in the day. You were headline news, doing education at schools, which she did quite a bit. And this is Manna Jo in one of her first jobs in recycling. So that is it. It was brief. I just had to show you. All right. So that said, Manna Jo, you can take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. And I am going to share screen, and I'm going to pick this one, and I'm going to say slideshow from the beginning. Where is it? I was telling other people to do it. Slideshow from the beginning. All right, you'll just have to.
All the way over to the left, Manna Jo, all the way where it says file, it says from beginning, all the way. There you go.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Okie doke. So, whoa. I think we will just go ahead and get started. the point of my talk is really showing how waste diversion can help us to promote landfill siting and longevity. And I also have a picture up on the upper right. That's me and Ben Madison, Jill Gruber, Marco Cinnamon, and a woman from what was then 9X at our first telephone book recycling event. And back in those days, well, before the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency got started, there were unlined landfills in most of the towns in Ulster County, a lot of backyard burn barrels. And this is an example of some of the very early recycling efforts. And then in 1986, by state law, the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency was created to provide comprehensive management of Ulster County solid waste. In 1988, then Assemblyman Maurice Hinchey led the creation of the New York State Solid Waste Management Act, and it mandated source separation, that municipalities would define their mandatory recyclables for which economic markets existed. And I think I cut off a number there, but it was by September 1991, I think. And then Ulster County created the first county solid waste management plan, which I actually have a copy of. It's falling apart, but and Ulster County itself passed a solid waste management law and created a solid waste agreement, which expires, I think, in March of 2025. So we still have a little bit of time on an agreement that's more than 25 years old. And then in December of 2012, Ulster County passed a flow control law and instituted that. And the agency has not had to ask the county for a net service fee since flow control was implemented. And there, in February 2020, the agency put forward a local solid waste management plan, which was adopted by the board of the agency and the legislature. And I will say, when we discussed this in the legislature, there was an understanding that there would be a complementary or supplementary zero waste implementation plan that would be adopted. And within 2 years, every 2 years, the plan is supposed to be reviewed. The county has quite a few zero waste laws, policies, and there was a climate emergency declaration. The trifecta is food waste service, styrofoam ban, a plastics ban, bring your own bag, and then straw and other single-use items. The customers have to request it. It's not just given out automatically. These are ways of reducing waste. The county did declare a climate emergency, and I want to say it really is an emergency, and why it's so important that we all work together to manage waste as wisely as possible. And then Legislator Petit proposed and passed that Ulster County shall be a zero waste community, and that led to a zero waste action plan. And then most recently, the Ulster County Food Waste Prevention and Recovery Law was passed, And New York State followed with quite a few of these laws that started in Ulster County. New York State law went into effect in January of 2022. Just a quick comparison. The state law is 2 tons or more. The Ulster County law starts at 2 tons and then goes down to 1 ton a week, 3/4 of a ton, and 1/2 ton a week. And the only thing that's different is that because of COVID, the sequence is adjusted so that everything started in January of 2022 and will go through, I think, 2024 at this point. The state says that a facility, a composting facility or an anaerobic digestion facility has to be within 25 miles of a generator, otherwise they're exempted. In Ulster County, we include all generators regardless of distance. The state exempts schools and healthcare facilities. We do not. We think they're both doable, and especially schools are setting a good example. Pre and post consumer, we do allow some waivers for post-consumer food scraps. The state doesn't distinguish. The education there is done by DEC and Ag and Markets, and we, our Department of Environment and UCRA. I'm gonna kind of skip this slide in the interest of, but I do want to point out one thing. You can read food waste, household recycling, industrial recycling. Somebody needs to put their mute themselves. And then bioplastics. But what's really important, draw down listed climate solution and rank them by importance. And number 1 was refrigerant management. And to this day, the DEC is not as rigorous as it needs to be. And refrigerants, when they're not, when the refrigerant is not evacuated and it's allowed to leak, or intentionally the tubing is cut, either affects, releases CFCs, which affects the ozone layer, or adds to the greenhouse gas burden. But this is really where I want to focus. We're not unrealistic about zero waste. So we say that even though the law calls for, or the plans call for zero waste action or implementation plan, we're talking about approaching zero waste. The Recycling Oversight Committee was formed by law. Laura will be talking about that. She chairs that. But their main purpose, first of all, they were multi-sectoral, so that stakeholders from all areas of the county would be represented. And their main purpose is to evaluate materials, to advise the UCRA when to add or delete materials as a mandatory recyclable, specifically if there are markets or not. And the Recycling Oversight Committee developed a zero waste action plan, and that was refined by legislators Petit and Bartels, who's now chair of the legislature. And then a group of us, because there were concerns that the zero waste action plan might not be as implementable, there was a lot of language that was aspirational. We wanted to help define who was going to do it, who was responsible, how it was going to be funded, a timeline, and really make it as specific as the implementation plan, for example, for landfill siting is in the local solid waste management plan. And then this past year, our dear friend John Wackman passed away and left us some really valuable waste diversion information. And Legislator Bartel's earmarked $75,000 in the capital improvement plan for an RFP to do a feasibility study this year and hopefully to implement next year. And our Department of Environment has been very proactive. They are reaching out to the major stakeholders, and there will be an advisory board and lots of public input. And then hopefully by the end of the year, or certainly 6 months into next year, it will be finalized and we can move to implementation. Our goal informally, this is not in any document, is 80 to 90% waste diversion. Not going to go into the details. If anyone wants to see the details, we can make this available. But this is how what we believe will be the John Wackman Reuse Innovation Center and Materials Management Complex. And this is what John left us. And very sadly, he sent this information over to us and did a presentation to the Zero Waste Implementation Group the day before he passed away. So that's why we are so determined to look at each of these examples and synthesize them into a zero waste implementation plan. We've been working on it for over a year. We've gathered a lot of information, and we're hoping to actually pay somebody to put it together as a polished document. And how this is going to help with landfill siting. Up on the upper right is Seneca Meadows. We don't know for sure when that will close, but waste diversion will reduce odors, toxicity, and traffic. So diverting food waste and other organics helps to reduce odors. C&D will reduce odors and save landfill space. And sheetrock especially releases hydrogen sulfide, which is that rotten egg smell. Other bulky items can be repaired or disassembled and recycled, including mattresses and furniture. We've talked about food waste and on organics. If they're rotting in a landfill, it reduces methane, which is a very powerful greenhouse gas. Countywide or a regional landfill can be an asset. It would save the transportation cost to Seneca Meadows and keep those dollars in Ulster County and keep the tipping fees in Ulster County. And right now, the UCRA has been paying from $8 to $9 million a year to export our waste. I'm hoping that Kamiko will have a chance to talk about the possibility of creating monofills to store materials for which there are not yet better options, but not mix them in with the garbage. Delaware County actually recycles sections of a landfill. What's also really important is to create a very fair host community benefit and do the landfill siting in a way that is fair and transparent and science-based and keeps politics out of it. So this is a graphic that shows the trip from the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency to Seneca Meadows, which is 467 miles away, or a round trip. And I mentioned the cost, the greenhouse gases, and I hope I did this. I asked Europa to check my math, but apparently it's over 6,000 metric tons of CO2 or equivalent per trip. We can do better and must do better. And so I want to thank particularly Shirley Cobrand and Elizabeth Askew, for whom these two ladies probably had more influence on my getting involved and having a 10-year career in solid waste. I was very happy as a nurse. But this was a problem that needed to be addressed in the 90s and needs to be addressed in the 2020s. And you can see, you know, Ulster County's been awarded for vision, and let's implement that vision. And that's a closed landfill in the town of Ulster, which is now a very large solar system. So thank you very much. And I'll pass it to, I
Yeah,
think,
to-
Laura.
Yes,
And I'll
thank you
stop
so
sharing.
much, Manna. That's awesome. Laura, you're on.
I'm on deck, huh? Whoops. Oh, you never want to hear whoops, do you? I think I pressed the wrong button. I was trying to get my screen open. Share screen.
I'll just say while we're getting that together.
There you go. Did somebody have a question before I start?
While we're getting that together, if anyone has questions to put in the chat, you're welcome to do so. In between our speakers, we can talk about them. There is a link that Janelle just added. Thank you, Janelle, regarding refrigerant management. And please check out New Yorkers for cool refrigerant management in the chat. All right, you're all set.
Thank you. I'd like to add in as well. I was fortunate enough to have known Shirley Cobran and Elizabeth Askew, and wonderful women, so dedicated and with so much drive to really make a difference. And then I was just as fortunate to train under Manna Jo Greene and Emily Hauser. Sometimes putting three of us in a room together alone, I don't know how we all made it out okay. But I learned a lot. I'd like to say everything I learned from them, for, you know, solid waste education and grant writing. So, and of course, my background, aside from being a policymaker now, I was boots on the ground with solid waste. And I worked for the town of New Paltz for many years. That's where I am going with my presentation. If I can move it forward, how do you move the next?
Try the down arrow.
The down arrow? No. How about the over arrow? The up arrow? Maybe I won't be able to use this as a crutch, huh?
Perhaps a click.
Yeah, on the lower left-hand.
There you
oh,
go.
good.
Yeah, the click worked. Thank you. So when I first started working for the town of New Paltz, you know, generally it was operated as a transfer station. It is a real eye-opener to see what is no longer needed, what gets thrown out, and what is certainly nothing I would consider garbage. I was equally as fortunate in 2012 to be contacted by Kamiko Link, who wants to recycle and reuse and divert everything. And we were included as one of 13 municipalities nationally to create a roadmap for zero waste. So I think the question would be, because we're always looking at, you know, recycle, you know, are we really green? Even though we recycle, in New Paltz, we pulled 10 containers a month of recycling. We pulled cardboard and we pulled our plastics. But we were looking at a 16-mile, so 32-mile round trip to Kingston. And then they would bring the container back empty, probably 3 to 4 gallons of fuel, 360 gallons annually. And the impact with the CO2 was about 3.42 tons just for New Paltz. And mind you, in Ulster County, the municipalities only bring in about 11 to 12% of the total waste stream, which is up over 138,000 tons annually, especially now with the new construction craze and everybody shopping on Amazon So what we looked at when we first started doing the zero waste, the low hanging fruit, of course, was gardens and organics. There was a sweeping interest in creating a registered composting facility. And again, this is why it's nice to involve the public and get their feedback. If you can get the public to buy in, things really do work, and you have your volunteers. I always got excited about backyard composting, but we were in New Paltz, the first registered facility in Ulster County. The Resource Recovery Agency is the first permitted facility. We also looked at collecting vegetable oil, which we could recycle with our waste oil, and looked at creating a green jobs, which is a big trigger word now.
Laura, you accidentally put yourself on mute.
There we
Yeah.
go. Thank you, Manna. You still always have my back. The first year we brought in 245 tons of food waste. We brought it in from the SUNY New Paltz campus. We brought it in from the Culinary Institute. Kamiko Link was good enough to arrange for a tour. We went out and toured their facility and also looked at how they were handling their renderings and their vegetable oil. It was significant. And if we're looking at managing our solid waste, it helps if you look at it as a commodity. Every component of it has a value, and it shouldn't just be garbage in, garbage out, and we're going to pay whatever a ton, and the impacts we have on our environment. There's usable clothing, there's food that can be collected. There's the compost. We would get a fee for them to drop it off and a fee for selling the final product. So it really is a win-win. And speaking of collecting food, we partnered with the family of Woodstock, Rondat Valley Growers Associations, and Ulster Corps. The first year we brought in 9 tons of food. Again, when you're talking about bringing it down to zero waste, you need to look at managing it before it gets to a transfer station. Because when you say, oh, we're collecting food waste for people, it's not the stuff that's scraped off of plates. It's the items that were in the bistro at SUNY New Paltz, that were getting close to their expire by date. Yeah, same thing with Tops, same thing with the bakery. It has now gone up to over 30 tons. It's brought into, we have our own little hub. We have a CoolBot, which is a refrigerated shed. And we have 6 of our local pantries pick the food up and distribute it. It adds, with the gleaning, it certainly adds a lot of the fresh produce in, because years ago, if you were someone in need, you'd either get dried beans, rice, or bread. And now, as you can see from the open fridge, there's a lot of fresh frozen produce. And of course, these sandwiches from SUNY New Paltz, I tell you, falafel and shrimp salads. And I mean, just really, I brought some to somebody who was in need. He goes, I'm going to be eating like a king. So again, this is a world of abundance, and what somebody doesn't want, we should certainly be able to pass along. We also did the SUNY campus clean out. Textiles are a big one. That was another, I'm thinking back, 10 to 12 tons that we would pull out. I think our last one through, we only maybe collected 5. We took out what we thought the pantries would want, the shelters. We set it out for the public to take for free. And then if we did have anything left, or if it had rips in it, it would go into a clothing box. They will take materials, clothing that is not necessarily perfect. And then it can be made into, if it's, cotton jeans, it can be insulation. other materials. And this is, you can see, we had people lined up. And I think out of all of that, we'd end up with one small bag of garbage of stuff that nobody wanted. This was from a clothing swap, which was a lot of fun. You can do that on a larger scale. You can do it as a small neighborhood, get brand new outfits. So, and here are our numbers. What we also did is part of a way to divert materials is opened up a reuse and recycling center. And we did focus a lot on education. I think with anything, education is important. We have to educate people that waste is number 3 on drawdown. As Manna said before, refrigerants are number 1 as far as the impacts. We continue to do 25 tons annually. One of the best things we ever got was, unfortunately, it was due to COVID. It was somebody in the film industry. They brought in a tractor trailer load of fabrics. And some of it was marked at $27, to $35 a yard. And because we had that there, we had people coming in who were volunteering to make face masks. There's a lot of community involvement in here. We have that perfect Venn diagram, which is the economic and the environmental and our social, and right smack in the middle of sustainability and waste diversion and reuse. So I know a lot of you folks think I'm an environmentalist. It was always economics. A single mom of 5, those cloth diapers, I couldn't afford the Pampers. Growing your own food. Well, not only were the kids eating healthier, but I wasn't paying $1 a jar for that unsalted stuff. And then we look at the plastics. It is nice to put your plastics into the recycling container. The statistics are showing only about 10% of them are getting recycled. And I always use this picture. I couldn't imagine that we are not responsible enough to handle our own waste and we're shipping it somewhere else. And this is what we're doing to other countries' ecosystems. It was a single stream recycling that destroyed the oversee, well, that's a little bit spelled, markets. We get the dirty recycling. We had someone come out when we were showing the trough tube, because we pick through it to make sure the proper recycling is going in, and there were dead mice in there. We'll get Pampers because they're plastic, ain't they? No, they're biohazards. That has to go in the garbage, and please use cloth diapers if you want to help out. And our Solid Waste Authority, the Resource Recovery Agency's only been able to find real viable markets for bottles, jugs, and tubs. So everything else that's pulled out here is it's garbage, and it's unfortunate. That's where we get into the zero waste plan that came out of the Recycling Oversight Committee. And that committee was established, I believe, Manna, the same time that the original source separation and recycling law was written back in the early 90s. We have representatives on that committee from the public, from the commercial haulers, from the Supervisors Association, village mayor. We have multifamily dwellings, experts in the reuse or recycling field, and institutions. So it's a good mix of people, and we're taking a hard look at each component of the zero waste implementation plan as the separate work group gets the sections cleaned up. So that's it. Modify your consumerism. And I'm really preaching to the choir here. I've seen the names popping up. So there's nothing I can tell you that you're probably not already doing. We just need to get the word out so we can get everybody else to follow up.
Thank you, Laura. I was so into what you were saying, I forgot to keep any time at all. So next up we have Katherine Beinkafner, and Emily, you have everything that you need there. Yeah, excellent. Okay, Kathy, you're on.
I just want to interject.
Yeah.
There was a question about Manna's presentation stated that comments are due by March 18th. Who can comment and how can one do that is a question. Manna Jo also mentioned a zero waste plan. What is the time to achieve this goal? So I don't know if we want to wait until the end.
I don't think I can contribute much about those deadlines, but we can talk about them when we get there. How does that sound?
Okay,
I want
great.
to point out, these are some slides from a couple years ago, right when COVID started. And so I'm actually the chair of the board of directors for UCRA. And I'm going to start out and talk a little bit about recycling, and then some things that are going on at the agency, and finally get to the topic of landfill. We still have a tremendous recycling dilemma, as you probably have noticed. It seems that the best recycling we're doing right now is where we're getting the dual stream from the town transfer stations, because everything is sorted into, say, 4 categories: corrugated cardboard, newspaper and other papers, glass, and then plastic and metal cans and so forth in the 4th container. So all of that comes from the town's transfer stations to our facility in Kingston. And then it goes into the MRF, and then it gets sorted out perfectly a little more. And then we can actually sell those products because they're not contaminated. And our biggest problem right now, from the way I see it, is that the haulers are doing single stream. The single stream just turns out to be getting contaminated. I cannot imagine how much of it is actually winding up in the garbage and trash going to the landfill at Seneca Meadows. That's just something we've got to somehow figure out. What can we do to get that not to happen? I know what I do. I actually have a hauler. I just give them my trash and my garbage in the tote. They take it away every week. I put the compostable stuff into my composting barrel and let that do its thing. And then I take my 4 bags or boxes of recyclables over to the town transfer station and plunk those in the boxes. So I figure at least I'm maximizing what I have to be recycled. But with the single stream problem, it's not doing what it should do. Somehow we have to figure out a way. Maybe the county legislature can find a way to actually put something in place that will get the haulers to use dual stream. I think that's critical if we're ever going to improve the recycling. One other topic I'll mention right now is plastic. We are in contact, UCRA is in contact with a company in California. It's called Bifusion. Actually, Juan Tantillo told me about this company. And they actually have a machine that steam cleans the plastic and then melts the plastic and makes it into concrete building blocks. And they actually have a tiny house they've built with these blocks. And then it's on a trailer, so they can take it around to show it to people. But so far, I don't really think they actually have these machines for sale yet, or we know more about it. They have a machine that does this, but I don't think we can buy one yet. But I'm still interested in that because they're very solid blocks. You could strike them with a sledgehammer and you wouldn't break them. Whereas you know that a concrete block, you hit it with a sledgehammer, you could break it. So that's about all I would like to say about recycling. If we could pop into the next slide, Emily. Next slide, Emily. Very good, excellent. Okay, this is kind of the aerial view of our facility, the transfer station in Ulster up on Flatbush Avenue. And I just want to show it to you because it's our main facility and what goes on here. And you can see on the lower left, there's a weighing scale. And behind that is the vehicle maintenance facility. We have a zillion trucks. We have all kinds of stuff moving all the time. So we actually do maintenance, most of the maintenance on our own vehicles. Then we have the tipping floor is in the center lower part of the diagram. That's actually what we would call the transfer station, where the big trucks come in and dump the garbage and trash onto the floor. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then on the upper part of the diagram, you can see the MRF, the material recovery facility, where we do the sorting of the recycling. And next to that, on the left side, we're actually building an education center. It's so it's not shown in this because this is an older diagram. And then to the right, underneath where it says organic recovery facility, that's where we're doing the composting. Now, all of our composting is happening on a concrete floor. So we don't have problems with mud and stuff like that. Nor do we have the town of Ulster. Their problem with odor is coming from one of their very own sewer treatment plants, which happens to be, if you were to go down underneath the Kingston-Rhinebeck Bridge and a little further north, you would find this sewage treatment plant. And that's actually the source of the odor that people have complained about. Although at the beginning, we were not so good at composting either, but we've got it under control. Another thing while we're here and we're looking at it, most of our traffic comes in from the lower left of the diagram and either goes to the tipping floor or the recycling or someplace. And then maybe somebody comes to buy compost, they get weighed, they get the compost in their truck, and then you get weighed again on your way out. So all the traffic is coming in one way and going out the same way. We're working on trying to figure out a way to do two things. One is to, in that area east of the tipping floor, to the right, I would say, is to put in a separate area where we're going to bring in construction and demolition debris materials, C&D, because we're going to sort those separately. Because we think that there are places we can get rid of them without necessarily putting them in a truck and sending them all the way to Seneca Meadows. So that will divert some of our stuff. A lot of that material is actually burnable and could probably go to Poughkeepsie to the incinerator, if indeed they have space and needs. It's all, the incinerator, you just have to keep feeding 24 hours a day, day after day, 7 days a week. And so there may be possibilities there of actually less transportation and easier disposal. So our idea is, though, is to bring the traffic in from the lower left, bring it up through the center of the facility, and then like drop down straight and go around behind the office building and back out that way, so that we're not passing by the incoming traffic. The outgoing traffic will be going another way out of the facility. We're just starting to work on that. It's a new part of our project. Okay, next slide, Emily.
Emily?
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Where does our waste go? And we can go right to the next slide. We have, this is a picture of the tipping floor, stuff out of their truck and onto the floor. And there's two things that happen here. A lot of this material is shoveled up with this grapple, this machine you see on the left, and it lifts up all of this material and chucks it over the back wall into the waiting trucks that go to Seneca Meadows. But before that happens, we actually try to divert as much material as we can off this floor. Get stuff that's recyclable that shouldn't be going to a landfill out. It's very dangerous to do this, but we've managed to create ways to do it, and we're doing an incredible job. Next slide. Here's the truck, which is the trailer is behind it. And over that wall on the left comes the grapple, dropping the stuff into the back of the truck. So that's how we get the stuff off the tipping floor into the truck, and then the truck goes to Seneca Meadows. Next slide. As Manna Jo already showed us, it's 250 miles. It's actually, we ship both from New Paltz and Kingston. So let's say it's 250 miles from New Paltz to Seneca Meadows. It's a little bit shorter from Kingston, but it's still a gigantic carbon footprint. And anything we could do to get that lower would be wonderful. Next slide, actually. And the diversion. The concept of zero waste is a great idea. We'll never get there, but it's a good start. So what we're doing, of course, as I'm mentioning all this diversion from the waste tipping floor, is this is a whole pile of air conditioners, which have been removed. And in 2021, we had 2,500 units of refrigerators and air conditioners removed from the tipping floor. And from each of those, we actually have to take out the Freon and put it into a separate container. It's regulated by the feds because you can't release it into the air. So by each one of these coming off the floor and it's actually taking out the Freon, we're doing the job right. Next slide is just a whole bunch of refrigerators. And the next slide is here we've got fluorescent tubes and wire. And let's see, in 2021, we had 1,300 fluorescent tubes removed and 5,200 pounds of wire. That's over 2 tons of wire. Phenomenal that this is being thrown away when it can actually be reused. And ballasts, we have like 450 units that come in. Ballasts are very heavy transformer packages that have been used for fluorescent lighting. They've gone by the way because now we're doing, this is the kind of lighting we do. Not GED, something else. Anyway, we don't use ballasts anymore, so we're still collecting them. Batteries, we've had over 200 batteries collected every year, or this past year anyway, 2021, that were diverted. Next slide. We have propane tanks. We had 1,100 propane tanks removed in 2021. And the next slide is tires. And we had almost 4,000 tires removed. Next slide is, here we have some cardboard recycling. 86 tons we recycled in 2021. And then in front of that, you can't really see, it says wrapped electronic waste. All the e-waste, we have to wrap it up in plastic, and then we have a vendor that comes and takes it away. And so that's why it looks kind of funny, it's wrapped up. Also, in terms of metal, which we don't have any pictures of, we had 550 tons of metal and 2,000 tons of copper that we've reclaimed out of the tipping floor. Also, a problem for us has been textiles. We've tried to collect textiles. We thought we had somebody who was willing to take them, but it turns out we don't really have a market. So this is a real problem for us, textiles. It would be nice if we could find a market or figure out a way. You clean, and that's part of the, we have to find some way to get it out of the waste stream before it comes to us. The next slide just shows our concrete area where we have these blocks that set off the different piles of composting where we're doing our composting. And the next slide shows our area where we have the clean wood collection, which is brought in. And then there are 2 ingredients to make compost. One is clean wood, which we chip it up into small pieces. And the other part is in the next slide, which is the food waste. So we mix the food waste together with the wood particles, and then they're in a big pile. And then we're busy mixing them, and we pump air through them. I think the next slide you can actually see this little dog house. It looks like a dog house. It actually has a big blower in it that we use to actually blow air up into the center of the pile of compost to generate the compost. And that's really what I wanted to say about diversion. Let's see. Another couple of things I want to mention was about the pandemic. Our office staff managed to adapt very quickly to dealing with the pandemic, but we had all these workers out in the tipping floor, the MRF, the vehicle repair facility, our scale operators, our truck drivers, everybody down their masks, and they did a great job. We're very proud of their work, that they really came forth and really kept everything moving. Interestingly enough, during the pandemic, the MSW increased by about 5%, from about 100 to 105 tons between 2020 and 2021. And the construction and demolition materials have been increasing about 3.5 tons each year for about the last 5 or 6 years. So now we're up to 42.5 tons in 2021. So C&D is really becoming a bigger and bigger part of our solid waste that we have to deal with. The last topic I'd like to talk about is landfill. My point of view is that the time for landfills has come and gone. If you bury it, something, someone will want to dig it up in the future. There are newer technologies. I think a waste to energy plant would be a much better way to deal with our garbage and our trash. And I'll give you some ideas. Westinghouse has a new technology which harnesses electricity, creates a lightning bolt that when it hits solid materials, it turns it into a plasma, a gas of atoms. Some of this gas and other materials can be drawn off, such as hydrogen. Remember, we were talking earlier about hydrogen being important at this Plug Power place up in Slingerlands near Albany. It's going to be making the hydrogen cylinders for operation of forklifts. So it's the same concept there, as well as there are other commodities that can be drawn off from this type of waste to energy plant. The final thing that comes out of it is like stone, like rock down at the bottom of it all, which, well, you could put it, use it for roadbed material, but it's a very complicated process. It's new scientifically. If we were lucky and could really spend our time lobbying NYSERDA, New York State Energy Research and Development Corporation, and the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation, what we would really need to do is get together a group of about 5 local counties. So we have a certain amount of waste that could go into this type of waste to energy project. And I would much rather see that happen than a landfill. But I will report that UCRA has commissioned a landfill study for Ulster County, looking at every single parcel of land in our, there's about 25 steps of places where you cannot put a landfill. For instance, you can't have a landfill in a wetland. You can't have it on places where you have carbonate rocks, limestones and dollostones, because they're soluble. There's all kinds of places, state-owned properties and so forth, and other parks and various places. So we're close to having results from that study, but we're not there yet. And that's what I have to say. So if we have questions, I think it's time to ask questions.
Thanks,
you.
Kathy. That was amazing.
There are a lot of questions. How are we doing on time? Can I pitch some of them, or are we gonna wait?
Now is good.
What
Okay,
else can we do right now?
So regarding the March 18th deadline that was asked in the previous session in the chat,
Manna Jo, thank you so much. Gives the email address for herself and also for the Ulster County Department of Environment, which is emcg@co.ulster.ny.us. For comments on Reuse Innovation Center, please ask them, Ulster County Department of the Environment. And you can ask for a copy of the RFP, the request for proposal. There's also some questions. These are some practical questions. I've been holding on to some fluorescent tubes forever. Can I bring them to the RRA? Where are the diverted batteries sent? Just quick answers to that. There's also someone who says, yes, I have alkaline, lead acid, nickel, metal hydride, and lithium ion batteries. What's your recommendation?
I know that I'm in the town of Plattekill, so I know that my transfer station would take those. Normally, private cars can't really come into our transfer station in Kingston except on Saturdays. We also have household hazardous waste days, about 3 of them a year. Normally
Okay,
we
that's a good
do
idea.
2 of them in Kingston, and we have been doing like one at New Paltz at the DEC headquarters. They're the regional headquarters in New Paltz. And so you have to sign up for a time slot so that everything keeps moving and no one's waiting longer than they should have to wait. So watch
Awesome.
our website, the UCRA website, because we always have those listed when they're coming up. I don't know of any that are coming up right now, but we usually do 3 a year. So here we are in March. We must be planning something. And I just haven't had a chance to look at it.
A question about the blower that was in the little doghouse. What powers the blower?
Electricity. I mean, there's probably a big fat extension cord that comes out on the MRF and goes over there. It's not far from the MRF. So that I'm familiar with those particular blowers. I use them in other places for other types of work I do in cleaning up volatile organic compounds. And it's the same type of blower that's used. It's a very, very strong blower and it blows like crazy. So
Okay, there was also a question looking for documentation on the landfill. That sounds fascinating. Where can I look for more?
On what landfill would you like to know about? That's the question I'm asking.
I think well, you showed pictures of the landfill. So what was that a picture of? Which location was that?
I think Manna Jo has one of, that's the town of Ulster closed landfill. It's on that little road that goes back there behind how you would get to Sears from Route 9W. The Sears, it is no longer a Sears. On the right hand side, that landfill is closed, long closed. And ultimately they put a bunch of solar panels on it. New Paltz is talking about putting solar panels on theirs. I don't know. I recommended maybe they could do that in town of Plattekill, but I'm not sure what's going on.
Okay, so the question was about the operation you were talking about, a new treatment plant in Rochester.
Seneca Meadows?
Yeah, I had a picture of Seneca Meadows. I also wonder if the questioner is asking about the landfill siting process here in Ulster County. And I did see that Paul Rubin, who's doing that study, is on the call. And I just want to say how much we admire his work and what a good choice the agency made in having Paul do that feasibility study, or the first part of, the preliminary part of it. I think there'll have to be more work done, but it's a screening process and we want to be sure that it's done fairly with the best science, and then it ultimately includes, I want to remind people that 25 years ago when we were trying to site a landfill. The League of Women Voters was very active in the landfill siting, not so much the siting process, but in developing a host community benefit program. And really that advisory board, I think it was called a citizen advisory council or citizen advisory board, was designed to have, my son just came in with cat food, which is necessary. It was designed to be inclusive. So it was the League of Women Voters and the Sierra Club and businesses and haulers and similar to the current Recycling Oversight Committee. But unfortunately, in spite of the good advice that they were giving, some people didn't want to hear that advice. So after the host community benefit program was developed, that citizen advisory group was disbanded. And I think that was a big mistake. I think it was really valuable because it was geographically diverse and it was sectorally diverse. And I hope that we can, with this feasibility plan that is going into effect this year, that we can create, that kind of widespread input, that this time people will listen. Last time when they didn't want to hear what the wisdom that the league was providing and others were providing, they disbanded it. And I do think that was a mistake. But anyway, I think that the landfill siting process has to be done carefully. And I just got permission, we just got permission to go to the association, Ulster County Association of Town Supervisors, because what's been happening is kind of a premature NIMBY reaction where towns are sending the agency letters saying, not here, not in my backyard. And that stifles a sound landfill siting process. And I'll be darned if we're going to keep paying $9 million a year and all that pollution to export our waste. I think we can do a fair siting process, and it'll be easier to do if we have a strong waste diversion plan in place.
I agree with Manna. Once we get our zero waste implementation plan in, and we can bring that 138,000 tons down to 30,000 tons, the environmental impact of bringing in a final resting place like a landfill for these materials won't be as much of an impact. And, again, we're putting all these great materials, or even compost, which, I got some in the garden already. It smells wonderful. And last year it was, chicken poo and eggs and coffee grinds. And so, there's a lot to be said for doing the most waste diversion that we can, taking a look at what we're buying, modifying your consumerism, and then we can really downsize that landfill.
I think one of the big things about getting our diversion is we've got to get back closer to the source.
Mhm.
Our citizens have to realize that they're also responsible. It's not just UCRA, it's not just the transfer station, it's not just the town, but everybody is part of this game. And to do it right, it's going to take everybody. Just like the source separation of your garbage, of your recycling, it's got to come back to everybody's household where we started with it. But we are just a society of buyers, users, and ridders. That's what we do. We buy it, we use it, and we get rid of it. Oh, the manufacturers, says Cindy Bell. Right. Yep, that's a problem too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just watched a news report yesterday that with the economy taking such a downturn, Free Cycle and I guess Facebook has that too, are really making a comeback. So now it's not just a great way to divert the material, but it's got real social impacts because it's helping people that couldn't otherwise, get things that they need for their apartment or clothes for their kids that they're outgrowing. So it's, it's come full circle, I think. Unfortunately, the impacts to the climate, they said it's too late. They said what we have to do right now is be able to acclimate to the damage that we've done so that we as human beings can survive. And to do that, we really have to take a look at how we're handling refrigerants, and don't let your scrap metal dealer tell you that it's okay to cut the line before you bring it in. It's not okay. And reduce the waste. And you can do that. And the best part is it's got wonderful economic impacts. What I didn't say when I did my presentation was when I first started in New Paltz, we were sending out 800 tons a year. It was 809 tons. And we had an $80,000 a year disposal.
Go down to the bottom.
When I
Click on
left, it was, we were only disposing of about 265 tons. And the cost was about 32,000. So it did have positive economic impacts as well.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Laura, do we have another question?
I have a question. I'm Johanna from Dutchess County, and our government is putting together a 10-year plan for solid waste management, and they favor waste to energy, and they're open to a feasibility study on organic food diversion from the solid waste stream. They're accepting public comments by March 23rd, and I'm trying to put together my thoughts about it, and I've gotten some great ideas. I commend Ulster County and all its leaders and people for what you've done there. I need to talk to people after this meeting to follow up, to get some ideas on how we can create a feasibility study, or how to get the government to establish one. What does it take? How expensive is it? How much land does it need? I mean, if you want to make the government listen to you about the need for organic recycling, you have to be compelling in your argument. I just don't know where to begin. So any ideas are welcome.
So Johanna, thank you for putting that in the chat. If you want people to connect with you, can you also put your direct email address in there? So it looks like there are some follow-up messages that followed yours. I know Kathy O'Connor was also mentioned that there's a Dutchess County hazardous waste event April 9th, 94 openings at this time, registration required. Thank you so much for that information, Kathy. So hopefully if we have Dutchess people on this call, you can get together and really make the most of that inquiry. And it looks like accepting public comments March 23rd to draft that plan for waste to energy and other ideas in Dutchess County.
Okay, Manna, you had a point to make?
Yeah, there are really good advisory groups. The Institute for Local Self-Reliance with Neil Seldman and Mike Ewall from, I think it's Energy Justice. And I already put my email in the chat. I'll add in my phone number, and if you want to call, I'll be glad to point you in the right direction and also get you copies of the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Manna Jo. I did make a note of your contact information. I appreciate your offer. And I did put my email address in the chat, jcfallert@gmail.com. And I'll put my phone number there too.
Better you send it to me because I get.
Of course.
I have too much
I will do that.
else to think about right now.
Anyone else have something to add?
I would like to just acknowledge legislator Litz joined us, Jim Gordon, who's now on the UCRA board, has joined us, legislator Nolan. And I'm probably missing people, but I think and I just want to say that my life would have been entirely different if it wasn't for the League. I would have never run for office. I was very happy as a critical care nurse. I would have never done garbage for 10 years. It was the bipartisan League study group that focused on collaborative solutions that inspired me for life. And I'm going to switch over just one more, just to see if there's any. Well, Tom Kakandis is on from also the UCRA board. And I think I saw Charlie Landy, which is almost the full board. Joe Maloney, legislator Joe Maloney, and a lot of other wonderful people. If we can work together, I am absolutely sure we can create a model that others will emulate and inspire. So if anyone missed the beginning, we can send slides, and I think the League will be sending around a link to the recording. Thank you.
Thanks, Manna Jo. We are going to have a recording on our website. It'll take a few days. I think we'll have it on our YouTube, but it'll definitely be on the website. And you know, I cannot begin to thank you all enough for all you've done for all this time, especially Laura and Manna Jo and Kathy for, you know, spending your time and, you know, being part of the solution. So please do, there was a request for you to share your slide deck. So if you could do that, if you can email it to me, or and then I can have them put it on our website separately, or is that okay?
Yes, and Margot Becker is also on the
yes.
board, and legislator Litz had his hand up.
Oh, I did not see that. Okay, Mr. Litz.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
There you are.
I'm sorry, I jumped on late. I had 2 other meetings tonight. As soon as I got off my meeting, I joined, so I missed most of your meeting. And I don't know how much you spoke about the farmers. Farmers are your original recyclers. Don't forget them in the process. My little farm, I just calculated over 440 tons out of the waste stream and feed to my cows. Personally, when you grow up on a farm, you learn how to recycle. It's not even something you consciously do. I generate one kitchen bag of garbage every 5 to 6 weeks. I recycle my paper, I recycle my cans, I recycle my plastic. It all gets, I compost my household, I compost my cow manure. But I generate one kitchen size bag of garbage every 5 to 6 weeks. Don't forget the farmers. They know how to recycle. They've been doing it for hundreds of years.
Great.
You may
Thank
want
you
to
so much.
You may want to talk to the cooperative extension, Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Ooh, another partner.
Yes.
And
Thank
our-
you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your time.
And our
Thank
food
you.
waste composting law says the highest part of that hierarchy is to divert food for reuse by humans or by animals before you think about composting or anaerobic digestion. And I think we can probably do more to put our businesses in touch with the farmers that are looking for food.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, it looks like we're just about out of time. I did want to thank again the AAUW and Lori. Lynn Gore, there you are, for everything that you did. This is great information. We can all be partners, but this can be put out to other people. This was a wealth of knowledge. So I thank you all for coming, and we'll see you at our next thing, maybe Kamiko as well. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.